Scott.
Yeah, good.
It's the people chair.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this regular meeting of the Town of Bristol Board of Finance to order May 21st, 2024, 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Meeting Room. First item on the agenda is roll call to order. Eric?
We have all members present with the exception of Gary Boland, who had emailed earlier this week.
Item 2, public forum. Does anybody wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to number 3, approval of minutes, 3A, April 16, 2024, regular meeting minutes. And I'll do them one at a time in case
Mr.
there's.
Chairman, I have a couple of suggested edits to the April 16 page 3. Item 5B. I suggest that first paragraph should read, G. Rook Norman commented that this year's budget process is the most difficult the commission has seen in several years. There were some words left out there. And then down the last line of that paragraph, the Board of Finance will do their best to work together with the Board of Selectmen and Board of Education. That's one change. The other change is third paragraph under B. 4th line down starts with obligated long-term debt, and gave an overview of budget line items he would cut back and believes it is a good start rather than places. And the next page, page 4. The last paragraph. Second line, the sentence should end at daunting task, period. And then G. Rook Norman explained that the Griswold budgets are bifurcated, comma, or passed separately, semicolon. Therefore, if the Board of Education budget was approved and the general government is not, then it would be very difficult to cut more from the general government budget. Those are my recommended changes from what I had in my notes.
Okay, anyone have any comments? Is everybody comfortable with approving with those recommended changes? Okay, then, someone like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes with those changes.
We have a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? I'm going to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item B, 3B, April 30, 2024, public hearing minutes.
Motion to approve.
We have a first, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? We're going to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 3C, May 2nd, 2024, special meeting minutes.
Motion to approve. Second motion.
Okay, first and second discussion. We're going to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, new business, Finance Director's monthly report, 4A.
All right, I give you a copy of the revenue and expenditure reports. Revenue reported date, we're at $39,337,103.82. That is 97.29% of budget revenues. Still no concerns at this point. I'm projecting we will end the year around 400,000 over what we had budgeted for revenues. So if that's the case, we'll only have to use 450 of the surplus that we had budgeted. In addition, it looks like we're probably going to close on the Glasgow property prior to the end of the year. So that'll put another couple $100,000 back into revenue, so that would be even better. Expenditures, we're at $35,380,304.56. That is 87.5% of budget expenditures, no major concerns. I updated the list of things currently over budget. I plan on doing transfers in June. As far as fund balance analysis, right now, a percentage of the current year budget, I'm estimating around 19.27%. Because some of the revenues since the last month came in a little better than anticipated. If we look at the budget as proposed for next fiscal year, what we're expected to be at for unassigned at the end of the year, we would be about 18.42% of that budget. So things are looking pretty good as far as the current fiscal year. As far as, I'll give you an update on the audit as well. I talked to the auditor today. It's currently in their review process. They expect to get it to me. She's thinking the final draft, they have the draft ready, but it's got to go through the QC process. She expects a final draft to be with me early in June. So they don't have any hesitation with it being done by the end of the month, because once I review it, it's ready to just print and send out. She was working on a couple things with the Board of Education, but they have everything they need now, so they are good to go for the beginning of June to have the draft. As far as the current fiscal year we're in, Deb and I have been going back and forth with the end of month reports. She just sent me September and October. General fund looks good there. Just a couple things we have to discuss. We're meeting on Thursday to kind of further the process. So definitely things are much improved this year. So we're working along and we shouldn't have any issues with getting the audit done on time next year. If anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Go ahead, Gail.
I just want to say thank you to Eric and Deb for working so hard to pull this together. I know it's not easy, and thank you very much for doing that.
Matt?
Just want to confirm, so those meetings are happening and going to continue to happen.
Right, yeah.
Excellent.
With regard to revenue, what's our current collection rate?
98%.
I know, well, are we at
Where are
nine?
we at?
Yeah, where are we at?
We're
Just
just
We're
about.
Right about 98, okay. Any other questions? Okay, 4B, update from Superintendent of Bristol Public Schools.
Good evening, Board of Finance members. In your packet, you have an update that I provided. This includes two items. The first is the third quarterly report. We are obligated by Public Act to post it to our website to share it. These figures in this particular report are current as of April 12, 2024. Things have since changed. I just want to remind you, this is a worst case scenario. The number in red has since come down. And as I discussed at the previous meeting, this is primarily due to unexpected tuition and transportation costs that are significant. The district has been on a freeze since December, and we are anticipating receiving more in excess costs. So we are very hopeful that this will be much more positive and in the black the next time you receive the final report. Deb and I are happy to answer the questions you may have on that particular update.
Any questions for Superintendent?
No.
Okay, so question for the board, does the board still want to see quarterly reports with regard to the additional special education teacher, or are they comfortable with where things are at this point?
If it's not a tremendous amount of additional work, I would like to, I'm sure
Okay.
they have to put reports together for their board, so.
Okay.
If that would be okay.
Sure, just to remind everybody, this is part of the business model and relationship we've had with the Board of Finance. This item, this part of the salary was funded graciously, we thank you, by the Board of Finance for this fiscal cycle. We can still study it, not a problem for next year, just to kind of take a look at it. The board has assumed this full salary and benefits for fiscal cycle 2025. Not a problem.
Well, the special project worked last time and
Hmm.
everything pulled together, so.
Okay, 4C, discussion and possible action on tax collector old credit balances. Leona?
Yes, good evening, everybody. So this is just for those who are not familiar with the process, each year, there comes a point in time where people who are due, refunds due to the fact that they wrote their check out for too much. Those items that are $2 or less do not get refunded because I do not produce bills for $2 or less. Anything over that $2 amount, they have a 3-year window per state law in order to request that refund. I don't ever make them request it, I send it out to them, but we try to, at least on 4 different occasions over the course of those 3 years. Sending them the refund form with follow-up notifications, telling them that they have money is due to them, and if they do not return it, then legally after that 3-year time period, I can't return it. So that money will stay in the general fund. So you all have the spreadsheet that I created. It shows 57 total accounts that fall within that criteria. Out of that 57, 45 of them are at that $2 or less mark. So I need the board's approval to go ahead and write those off within my software program. So that way that money remains in the general fund.
It's a move.
First and second in discussion. We're gonna vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 4D, discussion and possible action on suspense list provided by tax collector.
All right, so this is also something that's legally required for me to do every year to present to the board. This particular spreadsheet reflects only those folks or accounts that are deceased and are no longer collectible due to the fact that obviously they're deceased, but in addition to that, I do always follow up when someone passes. I do send out letters to the respective probate courts. And a lot of times they are non-solvent estates, so therefore there's no monies that can be sent to us to cover the outstanding debts that are owed to the town. These accounts are listed here on this particular spreadsheet provided to you, and there's a total outstanding of $6,351.05. The suspense account just basically means they cannot be counted as active monies or used as bargaining for your budgeting purposes. They get suspended but remain collectible for 15 years from the date that they were due. Sometimes it does happen that throughout the years, you know, a family member gets a vehicle, they need clear title, and we do get paid on some of the accounts.
Somebody like to make a motion?
Motion to approve the suspense list recommendations.
Second that motion.
First and second in discussion. Here now, we're gonna vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 4E, discussion and possible action on funding of wash rack. Eric?
You'd asked me to put this on the agenda, to discuss, because it's something that we really would like to do, but, funding is just gonna be difficult at this point. I had given you all a copy of what Todd had presented for prices that he got. And for Berlin, they had a base bid price of around 1.1 million for a wash rack. We currently have 75,000 set aside, so we'd have to come up with over $1 million to do that. On top of that, the other issue we would need to deal with is where we're gonna put it. Because it has to be somewhere that has city water and sewer. Or city sewer, but the original thought of having it out in the highway garage obviously doesn't work, but we talked about having it with a combo maintenance garage at the Board of Ed at one point, but I don't know, that's something we would have to figure out is where we're gonna put it before we even came up with the money.
What about ARPA money?
I don't know if we would have enough to cover the whole project.
Anybody have any questions?
Since this is an old, Mr. Chairman, since this is an old bid, is it possible to look into getting a more up-to-date bid? So we have better numbers to understand?
We can, yeah, between
I think-
Todd and myself.
Todd, I
we
think
can
you
try
had
and-
tried to get some current numbers, did you not?
The problem is to get site work and everything, we really need to know where it's gonna go, to get an accurate number. So I had taken two towns that did it recently, got their numbers and what their costs came in at, to kind of get an idea. I think we need to have a site specific location before we could really get a hard number.
That makes sense.
Right.
Even if we out the bid, I think we have to have, you know, proposals, we need to have a location. What I'd like to do, Scott, and sorry, just to discuss quickly, we had Boundaries, LLC do a study of school campus and locations that might be able to be placed. I'd like to dig that stuff back up and maybe provide it to the board.
Okay.
Of what we had looked at and what we were thinking originally,
Mhm.
just so we can have future conversations.
Sure. Sure. With regard to what we're looking at from, I think this is from Berlin. Not knowing anything about wash racks. Are there different levels? I mean, Berlin is, I'm gonna say probably a little bit different demographics than certainly we are. Are there different levels? Is this a Cadillac, wash plant, and we have the ability to get something that will do the job, but will perhaps be at a lesser cost, or is it a one size fits all?
Well, I reached out to probably 4 towns that did them in the last 6 years. One of them did a manual one, which completely operator washing. And they found that it wasn't as effective. These are automatic, where you drive over them, they do the underwash and the sides. The underwash is the important, and when the operator's doing it, there's no way for them to actually really get under the vehicle, which is what's missed the most.
Okay.
So that price, and I believe there were 2 prices I gave Eric, at one point. They're both automatic, but they have the option of also doing hands-on. Hands-on, so we can tell them to do it manually, or you can just drive right through and do an automatic wash.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Todd, is this something that would be possible to be a shared asset between like Griswold and a couple other smaller towns in the area, to have everyone chip in on the cost and to use it together?
Some questions about some of the.
I would assume like Voluntown, they don't have their own wash rack, and I would assume Lisbon probably doesn't either.
So there's some small towns around.
Yeah,
That's possible, we could, talk to them. And the other thing, big item for cost is we did it at Public Works, like Eric talked about, there's no city sewer, so we have to create a big field of drying beds to dry
Right.
this material. If you have city sewer, it can just go, so it would be a lot more costly to do it at Public Works than dry it
a lot more costly to do it which way?
at Public Works with drying beds.
At Public Works.
Mr. Chairman.
Tom?
Bob, have you seen any studies that document how many years it can extend the life of a truck?
I put that question out to two municipalities. They said that from the time before they had the lock track till now, they see that they're getting more life out of the truck. But I asked them if they could refine that more, so I'm waiting to see if they can get some feedback back. They also have public utilities that uses it, fire departments, they do all the town services through it, even the small vehicles run through it.
So not to try to, not to try to pin you down or anything. What would be your best estimate on what might be available in the way of ARPA monies that, I know that a large portion of it was gonna be contingency monies on engineering and some of the other stuff with the water sewer project. What's your best guess on what?
If
might be-
everything goes well with the projects, I would say probably around 1.2 million.
And obviously, just so our board is aware, we don't make decisions on where that money gets spent as far as ARPA funds go. That decision lies with the Board of Selectmen. Just so that there's not any confusion here.
But the 1.1 that is in this quote, that's only for the wash rack, not the building that the wash rack would go into, correct?
No, I believe it's a building as well.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I think the starting point should be location, which I know we hit a little bit on, but before we even go down the rabbit hole, we have to have, I think, an actual spot that we're gonna put it in. That's the decision, then we go from there.
Right.
Because as the chairman said, 1.1 million is what Berlin had. Berlin's quite larger than we are, I believe. So maybe that number would be a little smaller, and what Todd's saying, like the location of being with the treatment plant somewhere around here would benefit us. So I think maybe that's something, that first thing we should hammer down is location and then go from there.
So I don't want to go too far down a path yet. But you did talk about cost of, if you had it at, at the town garage comparatively to if it was a town sewer. Are we going to, I would assume that between town trucks, all of all the fire apparatus, the school equipment that's gonna be going through there. If it were connected to sewer, are we going to expect to have to pay some sort of, fees based on flow to,
I think we have a water bill and a sewer bill.
when you had explored this 10 years or more ago, did you ever get that far into exploring what that was gonna look like?
We were at that point looking for the location. That's how
Right.
we started this, and we had talked, about the board equipment being outside. Capital,
Yep.
Trying to get a building to house that inside to save it, keep it out of the weather. And incorporate this with that goal. That's what was originally discussed.
I agree that a location, we have to, before we go any further, we need to make sure that we have a location that's viable.
Mhm.
So.
Okay.
Is there a deadline on the ARPA money
It
spending?
has to be committed by the end of this year and spent by the end of 2026.
The end of this fiscal year,
No, the end of calendar year. It has to be
December
committed by-
twenty twenty-four.
Right.
Rob?
I don't know if it's in our purview, but perhaps, whoever's purview this falls under, put a committee together to look into this. And then be able to, so that way we can get a jump start on it, and by the end of the year, we'll know where we're at and have a good idea if it's feasible or not.
That would probably fall on the Board of Selectmen.
It's just a thought process.
Sure. Okay, 4F, discussion of possible action on the creation revision of policy regarding defining capital items. We're gonna visit this tonight, and I'm gonna guess table it and visit it again at our next month's meeting. But there was when some conversation with regard to more clearly defining what meets the definition of a capital item in terms of, for the town of Griswold. You've got what Eric, has provided us. Eric, I'm gonna give you the floor so you can kind of walk everybody through with what
Okay.
is here.
So Scott had asked me to put this on the agenda, so the first thing I did was go on the GFO website and look for best practices related to capital items. There's two documents I printed out and put in your packet. The first one is capital planning policies. That's really where we're looking to go as far as, setting up a policy for what is capital, what are the requirements. So this has some information in it. It's pretty good. And the other document is the capitalization thresholds for capital assets. The only reason I included this is because the planning policy had referred to it, but this one really deals more with how it's presented in the financial statements. So this is not anything to do with what is a capital item as far as our capital improvement committee goes. It's more how to treat capital assets and thresholds for financial statement purposes. So the capital planning policies is really the one that is the most relevant to what we're talking about.
Do you have access to, either sample policies or policies from other
I can find
communities?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have time by the time that I had, gotten your email to really
Sure.
dig deep into it, but I will for the next meeting.
Okay.
As we go forward with this, and when we have future conversations, I assume that you'll be pulling in the members of the capital improvements committee as well as the Board of Finance.
Yeah, I can let them all know that we're discussing it and what we're discussing. And make them aware
Right.
that you guys are talking about it at your meeting. Yep.
Anybody have any questions or any comments? And if not, would, someone like to make a motion to table this until next meeting?
I'll make a motion that we table it to next meeting. Second that motion.
Okay, first and second, any discussion? Hearing none, we're gonna vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. It's tabled to next month's meeting. 4G, discussion and possible action regarding the forming of subcommittees to explore budgetary changes to, and there are two subsections. Now, long story short, anytime that we were going to explore anything that was going to get brought back to the board, typically the chair would, loosely meet with, in the finance director, first selectman, whoever else it happened to be. And I'm looking to, share in that endeavor with really the rest of the board, as opposed to it being just one person that is kind of responsible for helping to craft this to then have it come back. I think it makes more sense to get some other viewpoints and bring it back. The first one is, recruitment and retention program for the town volunteer fire departments. When we're going through this budget cycle, we had expressed what we were looking for kind of moving forward, with regard to our recruitment and retention, specifically the stipends. There was a follow-up meeting that, I think I told everybody here that I had with the two fire chiefs and with Eric, and we tried to kind of clarify exactly what it was that we were looking for. One of the takeaways from that is I found the way that these stipends, I guess, are kind of calculated to be very confusing and kind of hard to wrap your head around, because there's this kind of sliding scale formula, and that is by design. There were some changes that were requested to be made by this board. I don't know, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, or something like that. But one of the comments was made is maybe we need to, streamline that process a little bit more, and maybe we need to look at it as on a paper call basis or paper training basis. So my answer was, we can certainly take a look at that. We're not gonna do it now in the middle of the budget year. We're gonna tackle something like that over the summertime and fall, coming into, the next budget cycle, so that it can be, planned accordingly. So what I would like to do is like to form a subcommittee of two members. I would like to see it be a Democrat and a Republican on this, and the purpose is really to just have some very loose, informal meetings with the finance director and the two fire chiefs, to try to revisit, get a full understanding on where we're at right now, and see what, if any, improvements can be made, or if there needs to be a redesign on how that stipend item needs to be done. Based on what the subcommittee decides, they'll be able to bring a packet back for then full board review at that point. This is a subcommittee that I would be interested in being on. But we're open to what everybody else wants. So I guess my question is anybody interested in being on this subcommittee?
I will join you, Mr. Chairman, if you need another person.
That would be appreciated. Okay, let's do this, I guess, in form of a motion and a vote, to formalize it. Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that Scott Davis and Matt Pico be the two Board of Finance representatives on the subcommittee to study the recruitment and retention program for the town volunteer fire departments.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Here, we're gonna vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The second subcommittee would be for Parks and Recreation. Ryan had floated the idea out of going to a Plan B based budget. For those that are newer to the board, the Plan B based budget is, I wouldn't say exact, but it's very similar in concept to how his budget used to work. And I would say probably, somewhere between the 4 and 6 year mark, I'm gonna guess that changed. There were, while it worked, there were some issues, and there were some issues really stemming in that it kind of was somewhat difficult to kind of keep track of. Ryan was able to keep track of it, but it was very difficult for us to keep track of it, I guess, is the best way to describe that. So while I think that your idea, and I think that the way you did that budgeting has a considerable amount of merit, I think it needs to be reworked. There are people that are on this board that were, on the board back when that was the budget that was used, or budgeting that was used. So they're pretty well versed in seeing both sides. Like I said, I think it was a good way to do it, but I think it just needs to be kind of revamped and reworked and address all of those areas where there's some deficiencies. So that would be the purpose of this subcommittee. If anyone is interested.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be interested because, I've seen both types of accounting. I know how difficult it is because he has so many projects and so much programming and different layers and levels, so I would be willing to volunteer for that.
I think that that's a good idea. I know that, I don't want to kind of call you out. I know that you had a lot of questions on his budget during that time. So I certainly think if there are items that are looking to be addressed, you would be a good choice. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be interested.
Okay. Tom? Anyone else?
Was that Tom?
Tom, yeah. Okay, we get a motion?
I'll make a motion to form that subcommittee for Parks and Rec with Gail and Tom.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, we're gonna vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, old business update and discussion on bonding projects.
All right, water and sewer, the sewer project, we should see them working sometime between, I don't know if they started anything yet, but if not, they will be out there by the end of the month. They put a timeline together. They expect everything, all the pipe to be in by sometime in July, I believe. As far as the water, they're putting a bid together now for the water line. And that'll be out to bid in June. They're hoping to try and get all the pipe in the ground this construction season. That's what they're shooting for. As long as there's no hangups, then that is a possibility. Again, the only thing that really is probably gonna hold us up the most is I haven't heard anything on the timing of generators and the pump station. But all the pipe they're shooting for to have in the ground this year. Other bonding project, the senior center, the only thing left on that list that you had approved of additional things, I believe is the bollards. Tina, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
They just finally got the automatic doors working. So that's the only thing left for the senior center. I have not yet put in for the reimbursement. I have to talk to USDA for the generator for the 30-something thousand that we have remaining for that. So I have to do that and we have to do the bollards on that project. Closed out.
You don't see any issue with the reimbursement from the USDA?
I hope not, but because of the delays, you never know.
Okay.
Because the money was already there earmarked, so it shouldn't be an issue, just like before, they allowed us to extend.
Okay.
Moving and stuff.
And I think we touched on this last minute, the meeting, the 201 portion of these projects, that's kind of dead in
Yeah,
the
right
water
now
at this
it's not
point, right?
Part of this phase.
Okay.
Is that something that the taxpayers are aware of? Have we sort of published an update on the website or whatnot? Because when they did initially vote, they were under the impression that it was 138 and the 201. So,
Yeah, it's been discussed during public meetings and also when we went to the utility companies.
okay.
Okay, item 6, any other business? Item 7, public forums, anyone wish to speak? Go ahead.
Ed Burdick, 764 Valentine Road. Appreciate the time and public forum. Two main items. One is, when you were talking about the audit, it seemed like we were talking about an audit for the previous year. Am I correct? I should have
Yeah,
done it.
year
Okay.
ending June 30, 23.
I hope that gets cleared up, like you said it was gonna be, I appreciate that. Number two is, I just want to go on the record as some feedback for the Board of Finance. No, it's not the, you mentioned, it's probably the Board of Selectmen and other parties. I'm not in favor of being on the school campus. And, but one of the gentlemen's on the Board of Finance, I don't know the gentleman's name. We are in the process of trying to get a town building and project committee formed, so I think his suggestion is good in the location, so I want to give him my feedback there. And the third thing is, it's probably not the Board of Finance you brought out, but the ARPA funds, I think the Board of Selectmen should have a backup plan to commit and obligate those funds if you can't get them for the wash rack. Should spend that money and get it for something. You know, I mean, that's just, I wanted to go on the record, even though it's not germane to what you guys do. Thank you.
Anyone else? Lori?
Laurie Sorter, 67 Ashland Street. I just had one comment on the wash rack. Gail, I heard you say something about regionalizing. Yeah, I wondered if there are any surrounding towns that do have wash rack. And if they would, if it's even feasible. I mean, I know we have a lot of equipment, but if we're able to kind of buy into them until we can, I don't know. You know, that's just something to look at.
Anyone else?
Is it appropriate for me to say something now?
Like to respond to what somebody else has already said? Probably not. Um,
I asked.
You did. Is anyone else who should speak? Okay, item 8, adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn?
In that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned.
I just want to say, Ed Burdick's coming.